Saturday tea time. You're cross-legged on the carpet, the telly on, and a public information. Later, you're behind the sofa, your heart pounding, with a cold fear in your stomach that won't leave for weeks, maybe years. If you grew up in 1970s Britain, you weren't just afraid of the dark. You were taught to fear water, electricity, strangers, farms, even the very real possibility that a Soviet missile could arrive in 4 minutes. The grown-ups weren't hiding these dangers. They were showing them on children's television and on the school projector. It began with a voice. I am the spirit of dark and lonely water, ready to trap the unwary, the show-off, the fool. Donald Pleasance whispers over misty ponds and still rivers. A hooded figure stands at the water's edge, watching children play too close, waiting. The Central Office of Information made that film in 1973, 90 seconds long, no music, just Pleasance's voice and the sound of water. A boy slipping down a muddy bank, another leaning too far from a weak branch. The spirit is always there, always watching. Sensible children, I have no power over them. That line was meant to comfort. What it registered was a thinner promise. If you were not sensible, he would be coming for you. After that, every pond, every canal, every flooded quarry on the edge of town felt haunted. You didn't only avoid the water because it was dangerous. You avoided it because something was waiting. Then the lights went out. It was not a tripped switch or a blown bulb, but the whole house falling silent in an instant. The 3-day week ran from the start of January 1974 through to early March. Edward Heath's government, locked in a battle with the miners, cut commercial electricity to 3 days a week to save coal stocks. The lights went out. Quiet. Parents reached for candles, paraffin lamps were dragged from cupboards, torches were shaken and didn't work. For children, the worst thing was not the cold or the boredom, it was how fast it happened. 1 second you were watching the telly, the next, nothing, only the clock ticking and your own breath. You sat in the dark, listening to your parents' whispers and wondering if the lights would ever come back on. They always did, but you never quite believed they would. Dentistry was a different, sharper fear. If you went through 1970s NHS dentistry as a child, you already know what came next. This was not a checkup but an extraction, and they did not hang about. You waited in the room that smelled of disinfectant with something sharper beneath it, your stomach turning before your name was called. The chair tilted back, a rubber mask went over your nose and mouth, the gas was sweet and heavy, the room spun, and then nothing. You woke in a recovery room with other children, half crying, mouths packed with cotton wool. A nurse handed you a little metal cup of pink mouthwash and pointed at the bowl. You rinsed, spat, and sat until your mother came. Nobody explained what had happened. Nobody checked if you were all right. Apasha's was different again. It wasn't a 90-second slot between programs. It ran 26 minutes, shown on a projector in your school hall. Made in 1977 by director John Mackenzie for the Central Office of Information, it followed 6 children playing on a farm, pretending to be Apache warriors. One by one they died, crushed under tractor wheels, drowned in slurry, poisoned by farm chemicals on a dare. After each death, the film cut to an empty coat peg, a cleared school desk. The game carried on as if nothing had happened. You sat on the hall floor. Nobody spoke. At the end a list came up. That year, ages, causes of death, scrolling past in plain white text. Then the lights came on and someone told you it was time for lunch. Rabies was a different kind of alarm. The Keep Rabies Out of Britain campaign started in 1972 and intensified after the Rabies Act of 1974. Posters went up at every port, every marina, every ferry terminal. Wild-eyed animals staring out at you. The public information film showed real footage of the disease in its final stages. A child restrained on a hospital bed in agony, no treatment, no cure. For a nation of dog lovers, that hit hard. Any animal that had been abroad could carry it. Any stray could be infected. Any bite could kill. Children who had once stroked every dog on the street suddenly hesitated. You saw a panting dog on a hot day and crossed the road. Was it ill? Was it safe? You couldn't tell just by looking, and that uncertainty was the point. Then there was Jimmy. He threw a frisbee. It sailed over the fence of an electricity substation. His sister told him to squeeze through the gap. He climbed onto the equipment, reached for the frisbee, and 66,000 volts. The Play Safe films, made in 1978 for the Electricity Council, were fronted by two animated hosts, a wise owl voiced by Brian Wilde and a young robin voiced by Bernard Cribbins, warm and gentle. And then they showed you Jimmy. The scream was the worst part. Then the cut to a radio newsreader calmly reporting a boy's death. Then the camera panning across his school uniform, hanging from a banister, never to be worn again. After that, every electricity... The fences, the yellow warning signs with the... You walked past them quickly. You never stopped. And if a ball or a toy landed near one, you left it. Quicksand was a different playground myth. Comics, adventure books, and other kids told you that somewhere out there, waiting in a bog or a muddy patch, was ground that would pull you under. You learned the rules. Don't struggle, lie flat, grab a branch. But you also knew, deep down, that none of it would work. You'd go under while your friends watched. Nobody ever ran into quicksand in Wolverhampton or Swindon or anywhere in the United Kingdom, really. But you still tested the ground before stepping. You still avoided the edges of ponds. Quicksand never turned up. But you never stopped expecting it. Bonfire night blurred excitement and danger. Children bought fireworks loose from the corner shop, penny bangers, jumping jacks, rockets, handed over in a brown paper bag. No age check, no questions. You carried explosives home in your pocket and lit them in the street after dark. The government ran safety films all through the decade. One ended with a child turning toward the camera, wearing dark glasses, blinded. The final line, will one of them be your child? Every kid knew someone who'd lost a finger or an eye. You never met them, but the stories were always there. Still you went. Every November 5th you stood too close to the bonfire, watched rockets fired from milk bottles, jumped when a banger went off behind you, scared and buzzing at the same time. Charlie was a gentler warning that cut deep. An animated ginger cat voiced by Kenny Everett. Charlie appeared in a 1973 Central Office of Information series with a boy called Tony. The Strangers episode was the one nobody forgot. A man approaches Tony in the park and offers to show him some puppies. Tony is tempted. Charlie stops him. I shouldn't go off with people. I don't know. Gentle. But it changed something. The man didn't look dangerous. He looked like any adult you might meet in any park, in any town. The lesson: you couldn't tell who was safe and who wasn't. Stranger danger sat alongside another everyday threat, the cane. Every child who went to school in the 1970s knew the cane, not because they'd all had it, but because it was always there, in the headmaster's study, in the punishment book, in the quiet that came over a classroom when someone was sent to fetch it. In England and Wales, the cane. In Scotland, the tawse, a split leather strap across the palms. The worst part wasn't merely the pain. It was standing outside the headmaster's door, waiting for it. On the 17th of May, 1972, 10,000 schoolchildren marched through central London with banners reading "No to the cane." It wasn't banned in state schools until 1986. For the whole of the 1970s, the threat of being hit by a teacher was just part of going to school. You behaved because of it. You sat still because of it. And that had nothing to do with respect. Lost in a department store was another common, simple terror. You were 5 or 6, your mother's hand there and then gone. Coats and shopping bags everywhere, adults pushing past, faces you didn't know. The people who might help were the same people you'd been told to fear. No mobile phones. No tracking. Some children had their name and address pinned inside their coat. The rest just had to hope. If you were lucky, someone in uniform found you. If luckier, you heard the tannoy. Would the parent of a small child please come to the manager's office? You sat on a chair behind a counter, crying, watching strangers walk past, waiting for a face you knew. If it happened to you even once,